Welcome, Hudson Valley. This is Conor Walsh, host of In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. This week on In Touch, we speak with Dr. Coral P.S. Hoh from Dysolve. Dr. Hoh and her co-founders created Dysolve to help students in the Hudson Valley and beyond overcome their learning disabilities through AI. Dr. Hoh and I discuss how the program works, along with sharing remarkable stories about what students have been able to achieve after using Dysolve. We invite you to join us and listen to a previously recorded conversation between Dr. Hoh and myself here on In Touch. I'm so proud to announce that In Touch has received another 2 Excellence in Broadcasting Awards from the New York State Broadcasting Association for 2024. In Touch received the award for Outstanding Public Affairs Program or Series for the 2nd year in a row. Not just that, but In Touch also received the award for Outstanding Editorial/Commentary. This recognition would not be possible without all of our phenomenal guests that we learn from and grow with every single week, and of course, you, the listener. Whether you've been listening for a while or you just found us, thank you for taking part in the conversation and staying in touch with what's going on in the Hudson Valley. Because of the awesome success of In Touch over the last year, we are expanding. We are launching a new spin-off series under the In Touch umbrella called Townsquare Spotlight. These spotlights focus on amazing celebrities and leaders passing through the Hudson Valley who are making an impact in pop culture. You can check out our latest spotlights with award-winning jazz musician and educator Hayes Greenfield and Team USA Paralympic swimmers Jessica Long and Haven Shepard. Hello, Hudson Valley. You're listening to another episode of In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program, and we have a very important episode for you guys today. Dyslexia is one of the most common learning disabilities out there. However, it is still so misconstrued in so many ways, and there's a lot of districts, a lot of schools that don't give it the proper attention that it needs. And that's why we're having the conversation that we're having today. With us, we have Dr. Coral P.S. Hoh, Ph.D. She's the co-founder of Dysolve and also co-author of the book, Dyslexia Dissolved, Successful Cases with Learning Disabilities, ADHD, and Language Disorders. She's here with us today to talk about this incredible program, new AI program that's helping students and individuals with dyslexia and other conditions just master it, go through their life, and help them with the proper tools that they need. And I'm really excited about this. I think this is a phenomenal program. So, Dr. Hoh, how are you today?
Very good.
I'm really happy to have you on here, and I'm really happy to talk about Dysolve, something that's here in our own backyard. You know, I'm in Poughkeepsie right now. You're in Hyde Park. It's right here in the Hudson Valley. Such a phenomenal program to be born and fostered here, and I think that's phenomenal. And I want to talk about Dysolve, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the program itself. But to start off, can we talk about what dyslexia is? I mentioned this before we got on the mic. For those who may not have it or don't have somebody in their life who has it, they may not fully understand the depth of it. They've probably heard of it, but don't fully grasp its full meaning. So could you please get into that for us?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me so that we get this chance to talk about dyslexia. And it is so poorly understood, even in research, even in schools, when schools are supposed to be helping students with it. And part of the problem is that it's like this. The different research groups are feeling different parts of the elephant. If you remember the story of the 6 blind men and the elephant.
Yes.
It wasn't until we got to Dysolve AI and build it and work with students did we really understand what dyslexia is. It is actually language processing inefficiencies in the brain. And there are particular parts of the linguistic system, the brain, that are just not working efficiently. And they're scattered all over the place in different brains. And that's why it's confusing for people. Whether you're talking about a specialist or just parents, you get all sorts of symptoms all across the continuum. And that's why, it's been a problem up till today.
Absolutely. And it's not like it's just one specific thing. It's a real spectrum of different symptoms and different ways that people can live with it. I think a lot of people think of dyslexia, they think of flipping letters. I feel like that's a thing that shows up on TV shows all the time, where a B becomes a P or something. And I'm sure there's some truth to that. But besides flipping letters. What more is there to it besides the reading aspect or the speaking aspect or writing? Because it really does hone into all those components, right?
Yes, that's right, right? So let me talk about the part about flipping letters. It does happen, even though some experts just dispel that and say, oh, there is no such thing. But we do find it happening with students with dyslexia. Why? It's flipping B and D, especially. Why? Because B and D, the sounds are so close together. So it can be just the processing of the sound system. That's why they're having this problem. You find that it is rarer with P and Q, right? Because you can flip P and Q too, but the sounds are not that similar. So it is a sound processing issue in that case. But you also talk about how it affects other language functions. It's not just reading alone, right? So technically dyslexia is just a reading difficulty, but that's just one of the manifestations of it. And since we are talking about language processing inefficiencies, they can be scattered across the linguistic system in the brain, so it will affect other things as well. And so that's why you find a lot of students with dyslexia and dysgraphia, right? Reading and writing. And, you see all sorts of symptoms.
That's interesting. And I'm glad that you're able to spell that out with the fact that it's more than just simply looking at a page and screwing up the letters, but the fact that it's a part of all different aspects in the brain in this way. And I think that's very important. So then, that being said, let's talk about Dsyolve. Let's talk about how you initiated this program and how you're able to develop this AI that's able to help students and individuals with dyslexia and language-related conditions.
All right. So we'll have to go back 30 years. I've been
Let's do it.
for that long. And, because I came here with a PhD in linguistics, I wanted to do something with my degree and not just, do theory building forever. And so I started helping children in my neighborhood, and they had all sorts of language difficulties, and some of them have names and some of them don't, and the parents are confused and didn't know where to turn to. In fact, Conor, a lot of parents don't even know what the keyword to Google for. And so, I just help, not dyslexia or anything else, they just don't know what it is. And it's not as if the label tells you exactly what the symptoms are. Like we've been saying, it's a whole spectrum, right? And so I started helping them, and I started to see more and more dyslexia. And, it's not just an academic problem. It's really something that impacts the family life, quality of life. It's very distressing for the parents. It's very distressing to have your child go to school and face, maybe bullying and all those kinds of things, because an academic problem quickly, just starts having all sorts of other issues: psychological, social, self-esteem, mental health. And I realized that this is really, really serious. And the size of it, right? To know that 20% of the student population and also the adult population have dyslexia. And so then I realized too that the complexity of it, with my background in linguistics, the linguistic system in the brain is really, really complex. You cannot resolve or analyze it or correct it one-on-one with, say, for me, more than 10 people at a time. It's just too much data. And that's why we started looking at AI. And we started developing this program that we finally called Dysolve 10 years ago. And we started testing that in 2017. And Conor, most of the children that we tested this on are from this area. And you know what? The book that you mentioned are their cases. And
wow.
Yes, how much they struggle. They were below the 25th percentile in state testing, some of them below the 10th percentile, and Conor, some of them were first percentile. For years, they were under, the 5th percentile for years. And how distressing and frustrating it must be for the parents by the time the children got to middle school. And yet, with Dsyolve, we were able to correct it in 1 to 2 years. And now, that's why you mentioned Aaliyah Williams, right? Because she went to college and she was about 2 grades behind. I feel comfortable talking about it because, she has given permission and she wants to speak to the press herself. And so there are these stories, but we know that we need AI because humans cannot do something that is so complex that requires so much computing power. And also with that precision, now we know what dyslexia is, child by child, right? Know where the processing inefficiencies are in the brain and at what level. So everything is measured, quantified, and precise. And when we say it's corrected, it is corrected because you can see it in the data, and then they start to thrive. In high school, they become honors and high honors students, and college students now, and then some of them want to go on for their PhDs. It's just remarkable what AI can do.
It really is remarkable. And to talk about that computing power that you were saying, humans altogether, our brains are amazing and complex in the wonderful things that we can do, but we have so many things going on. There are so many stimuli, so many things that are taking our mind off things. The awesome thing about this AI and this program is that it can focus on this, and it's specific, and it can really dial in. And I think that is phenomenal. And I want to talk about some of the things within this and methods that are used in a moment. Again, you're listening to In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. We're speaking with Dr. Coral P.S. Hoh, Ph.D., co-founder of Dsyolve, Dissolving Dyslexia. And it's incredible the work that is being done to help students with language-related conditions here. And something that I wanted to ask about is the Coral method. Would you be able to break down what the Coral method is exactly for us?
Yes, now it's pretty much built into the system that we call Dysolve AI. And we call it Dysolve AI because it's custom built, siloed, just for dyslexia and learning disabilities. Whereas, with the other AI tools and algorithms you see out there, they are generic. You can apply it to different problems, different fields, but Dysolve AI is specific for this. So the Cora method, what we initially developed, starting 30 years ago, was this ability to, respond intelligently to the kinds of errors that we see in students' outputs. So then, this now is an autonomous system. It doesn't need any more human guidance. It will just decide next what activity to give to the child based on all the errors and outputs and correct responses that had happened before from the start of the program, no matter how far back it goes. It never forgets anything, right? That's the amazing thing about computers. They never forget, right? Whereas it's very hard for a human expert even, right, to remember every single thing, right? And so the core method is about not just checking off, the child gave a correct response. No, it's looking at all the correct and incorrect responses. So the errors are just as important, right? Why did the child make that error? Where is the source of error? Does it relate to some other error? And so, Dysolve AI responds intelligently through all that has been built for that user. So as it goes through, it builds a user's database. So every user has his or her own database. And then Dysolve AI has to, with each game, decide, to which part to go into for the user's database and all the other relevant databases that's part of this system.
Wow. Honestly, it's really mind-blowing to think of how specific that this can be for each individual person. And that's the way that it should be. Having just a blanket way of going about things has shown time and time again that it's not always effective. May help some, but a good majority, not exactly. So the fact that you can hone in on this is just great. And it looks like you're bouncing to say something about that.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And now that we have, the trials running in schools in different states, that's what the teachers are reporting to us. So when they sit next to the child, and the child can be in 8th grade, and you think that the child has gotten phonics, that this letter goes with this sound and all that, and the teacher's surprised. My goodness, this child still doesn't know that, and so yes, Dysolve AI can pinpoint exactly where the problem is.
That's phenomenal. And I just want to point out for a second here. We've talked about different age groups here, how people are able to help out in middle school and high school and college, and a year or two's time able to make such a difference in years of being behind and now being able to catch them up. I just want to focus on this for a second. Anybody of just about any age group could fall into Dsyolve and receive this help, correct? This is not just like, oh, it's only good for a couple of age groups. It's like, this is really good for just about anybody, even if somebody who's gone most of their life undiagnosed, correct?
That's right. And we say for this current version, we would start with from kindergarten on up, right? With newer versions, we can go younger, right? So kindergarten on up, and then any age. Now, the ones who have come in, the oldest that we've had are late 20s, and we see that it's just as well for them. We can pretty much say that Dysolve AI will evaluate, and you can find out no matter how old you are, right, where the processing inefficiencies are. We just don't know with older brains how well they respond. But you know what? Now we have people in their 70s asking
Really?
to use Dysolve, and I understand why, because they may have relied on their spouses all along for reading and filling out forms. And then they worry that later on, if the spouse is not around, then what's going to happen? All right. So it's never too late. I would encourage people to just at least get the evaluation, because they've always had this question. What's the matter, right? Where's the source of the problem? Why am I struggling with this all through life, right? Now you have the answers to that question. Then work on it and see how far the brain can still be corrected.
It's kind of a very emotional conversation we're having at this point now, because we're at the point of technology and medicine and understanding where a number of people are getting these late diagnoses because just the know-how wasn't there decades ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 30 years ago when you started. The work that you've done, the work that your peers have done to be able to develop this is groundbreaking, but it's taken time. But now we're finally at a state where it's like, okay, let's go back and we can help out with these things. And I really think that's incredible. So you mentioned how people here in the Hudson Valley and also in other states are enjoying this program and getting its benefits. What has that looked like? What have you seen from individuals, how they've been able to develop since then?
Yes, the schools that had started to use it last year say that it's completely non-intrusive, right? Because they're always leery about picking on another educational program, a new one, because it always means, changing the curriculum, it impacts a lot of things, and then you have to pay for teacher training and all that, right? Dysolve isn't like that at all, right? Because we keep the practical side in mind, right? How can you make it as simple as possible? And so then you don't really need a trained teacher to supervise the children. If they are in a group in the lab, okay, you do need an adult, but anyone can do it because there's no training, no orientation, right? The child just logs in and plays the games. And also, if they want to track the children, then Dysolve AI shows them on the dashboard, teacher dashboard, active game time, right? Because just in case some of the children are just logging in but just goofing off, you'll know, right? Because Dysolve AI monitors if they did complete it and if they were doing erratic things on the keyboard, all that, and there'll be a so that that part is not an issue. The implementation is not an issue, right? And so I wonder why the school districts in our region, Conor, still have hesitated when their students are already using it and they've gone to college. They've gone to college, and we offered the local school districts grants so that they didn't have to pay for the program. For years we offered that, but they've still not come in, and I just feel that it's hurting all the children who have not been helped, because I got this stat from one of the school districts that how many of the children or students are performing below the 30th percentile in state testing? A huge number.
Yeah.
And how many of them actually get any kind of reading support, extra reading support at school? half that number. So that's the statistic. Half the students who really desperately need help do not get it in our local area, right? So why not give them Dysolve? Because Dysolve can give them that evaluation and the intervention right away.
I hear you. I think this is something that needs to be integrated into Hudson Valley programs as it is. I'm glad that there have been people that have come to Dsyolve privately and been able to do it on an individual basis. But based on everything that you guys have been working out, this is something that really needs to get institutionalized in these districts, in these schools, and become just a part of things so that they're not missing out. And I think it's great, everything that you guys have been able to do up to this point, and I think it's phenomenal. Again, you're listening to In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. We've been speaking with Dr. Coral P.S. Hoh, Ph.D., co-founder of Dsyolve. It is this learning AI that helps people with dyslexia and other language-related conditions. Now, in our last couple of moments here, before we wrap up this episode, how can people learn more about Dsyolve, whether they're looking for it on an individual basis, whether they're looking to incorporate it into their districts? What is the best way for somebody to look into Dsyolve now?
First, go to our website, dysolve.com, because we have a lot of information on dyslexia and related conditions. And some of this is new in the sense that it's generated by Dysolve AI. So we're finding out new things about these conditions. That's one. And then the other one to remember is that you can sign up, right? No matter whatever age you are at, it's always good to find out, about a condition that you've been struggling with for a while. And also for parents, don't forget that there's a federal mandate, the IDEA Act, which states that children with disabilities have a right to a free and appropriate education. So if Dsyolve is the right intervention for them, then parents can ask for that from schools. Schools have an obligation to give it to them, right? I think schools have an obligation to help all children who are struggling with reading and writing, right, and other language functions. They have an obligation. And so, if there is this program that is new, right, that they want to test out, by all means, check us out, right? You don't have to believe us, but you do have an obligation to all the children under your care to check us out. And so if they go to the press page at dysolve.com, right, then they can see the stories of the children who have been helped by it. And Conor, can I mention just also one story that's from our area?
Absolutely.
Because we are taking on the most challenging group, right? Students who are not even assigned a grade level because their reading level is at the pre-K level, and they are 19 or 20 years old. So they're in a special school to work program, but they're not able to change the academic difficulty, right? Regardless of how many years of intervention they've had in the school district. And guess what? They came in, they used Dsyolve, and within 5 weeks, just 5 weeks, their parents and their teacher are noticing changes. They want to read now. They're beginning to learn to copy down words when before they could only do it letter by letter. All these changes happened in 5 weeks. In 5 weeks. So for most students, the parents are wondering how long it will take their children to get out of the reading difficulty. Historically, it's been only 1 to 2 years. Regardless how long they've been struggling, right? They could be in 8th grade, they can be in high school, 1 to 2 years.
That is so incredible. That really is. Just thinking about how many years of struggling that somebody might be going through to then have a relatively quick turnaround time, like from 5 weeks, seeing those results initially, and then in 1 to 2 years. To some, that might sound like a long time, but like when you really look at it, 1 to 2 years compared to the rest of your life, the life before and the life after, Absolutely. So worth it. And you're right. Schools do have an obligation to do so. And though there are many teachers who want to help and they want to be able to give these students the resources, sometimes the districts don't always give them the right tools and supplies or the right know-how. So to be able to talk to you about this today and to share this information with the Hudson Valley community, hopefully this gets a few more conversations going in our schools, in our local communities, in our families, and just help people to communicate to the best as possible. So thank you so much. This means so much. Dr. Hoh, before we wrap up this episode, do you have any last little nugget that you wish to share with the Hudson Valley community about Dsyolve and about dyslexia here in our community?
Yes, even though your child may not have this reading difficulty, just remember that we're all taxpayers too. And Dsyolve costs only 1% of what our local school districts are paying for special education when it comes to trying to take care of reading. It just costs 1%. That means that it affects everybody, right? And including the children who do not have dyslexia or reading or learning difficulty, because education budget cuts affect every one of them.
I think that's very important, and that's a great aspect to be able to lay in there. The fact that you're able to help out this phenomenal resource, huge resource, but for a fraction of the cost. Fantastic. I think a lot of places will like hearing that, and hopefully let's get that into the door. But yes, Dr. Hoh, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for your efforts in helping out with the dyslexia and language related conditions community. And I'm sure I'm just going to keep hearing more and more and more wonderful things coming out of this program for hopefully months and years to come. Hopefully, just like in the program, 1 to 2 years from now, the Hudson Valley will be seeing things a little bit better. So Dr. Hoh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Conor, for all the important work that you do.
Of course.
This has been this week's edition of In Touch, the award-winning public affairs and issues program that runs across Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley radio stations. We want to give a big thank you to Dr. Coral P.S. Hoh. For more on Dsyolve, please visit Dsyolve.com. That's Dysolve.com. Of course, all links and information can be found in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Conor Walsh. Until next time, stay curious, keep an open mind, and as always, I'm glad we get to spend some time.